1. Let me tell you about this interesting 1973 Ford F-350 I found on Craigslist for $8,800. This is one of those classic workhorses with a 390 V8 under the hood, and an interesting story. The truck spent decades sitting under a carport with a camper on its back, and the original owner added a flatbed before it went into its long rest. We're looking at what's claimed to be just 79,000 original miles, which, given its history, seems pretty believable. Now let's be real here. This is a project truck that needs some love. The current owner has done some solid work. New carburetor, HEI distributor, fresh spark plugs and wires, cleaned up the valve train, and even reupholstered the front seat. The flatbed's been painted with bed liner, and here's the best part. There's supposedly no rust anywhere, even in the floorboards, which is pretty remarkable for a 73. But here's the honest truth about what needs attention. Those tires are ancient and need replacing, the carb needs tuning, and there's an oil leak from the intake manifold gaskets. The fuel system is currently running on a temporary setup with an electric pump and a gas can because the original tanks likely have old fuel in them. The good news is the 390 V8 runs strong. The automatic transmission shifts smoothly, and both power steering and brakes are working well. It's got a clean Nevada title, but let's be clear. This isn't a drive-home purchase. You'll need a trailer to transport it. 2. We're checking out a 1976 Ford F-250 Highboy listed for $8,000 on Craigslist. And let me tell you, this is an interesting piece of Ford truck history. Let's be completely honest here. This truck is in fair condition, as the seller states, and needs some additional love. But there's some really cool stuff to talk about. We're looking at a true highboy with both factory all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive capabilities, which is pretty special for collectors and off-road enthusiasts. Under the hood, there's a Stroker 360 engine paired with an Edelbrock carburetor, which should give this old workhorse some decent power. The C6 transmission is described as perfect, which is good news since these are known to be pretty bulletproof when properly maintained. The odometer shows 47,532 miles, but the seller notes it is rolled over, so we're looking at 147,532 plus actual miles here. The truck wears red paint, and while we don't have detailed information about its condition, given the fair rating, expect some wear and tear consistent with a 47-year-old truck. At $8,000, you're buying a project truck with some really desirable features, particularly that highboy status and the 4x4 system. But potential buyers should go in with eyes wide open. This isn't a restored show truck. It's a solid foundation that, as the seller honestly states, needs more love. 3. Let's talk about this sweet 1972 GMC Jimmy that's popped up on Craigslist for $13,500. This is one of those classic SUVs that just commands attention, and from what the seller's showing us, it's been kept in excellent condition. What we've got here is a real powerhouse with a 402 big block engine under the hood. That's some serious muscle. It's paired with the reliable turbo 400 transmission, which is known for handling big power like a champ. The odometer shows just 68,000 miles, and what makes this Jimmy even more appealing is that it's sporting a fresh paint job in brown, which was a great color choice for these classics, and new tires. The heavy-duty suspension setup means it was built to handle a camper, so it's got some real utility to back up those good looks. What's particularly interesting is that this is a rear-wheel drive model, which means less complexity compared to the 4x4 versions, potentially fewer maintenance headaches for the next owner. The seller states it runs great and is ready for either work or play, which is exactly what these vehicles were built for. At $13,500, considering the current classic car market, the fresh paint, new tires, and that mighty 402 big block, this seems like a pretty solid deal for someone looking for a clean, classic Jimmy. These early 70s GMC SUVs are becoming increasingly desirable, and finding one that's both clean and mechanically sound isn't easy these days. 4. Let me tell you about this absolutely wicked 1982 Chevy C10 Silverado that's up for grabs at $18,000. This isn't your grandpa's work truck. We're looking at a serious performance build here. The heart of this beast is a 383-stroker motor. That's a hot-rodded small-block Chevy for those wondering, paired with a turbo 350 transmission that's been rebuilt with a stall converter. Translation? This thing means business, whether you're cruising the streets or hitting the drag strip. The seller has gone all out with the build. It's got a posy traction rear end with 3.73 gears for some serious launch capability, and the front end has been completely rebuilt and realigned. They've dropped it with a lowering kit, slapped on new rims and tires, and even installed new shocks to keep it planted. What's really impressive is the attention to detail. We're talking a new interior, new radiator, and according to the seller, pretty much everything under the hood is fresh. The odometer shows 3,500 miles, which likely represents miles since the build was completed. The truck wears yellow paint, and from the seller's description, this is a recent build using top-shelf parts throughout. It's one of those builds where the list of new components is so long, the seller can't even remember everything that went into it. 5. Let's talk about this 1972 GMC Sierra that's popped up on Craigslist for $8,000. And I've got to be straight with you about this one. Here's an interesting situation. We've got a truck with a freshly rebuilt engine and transmission, new exhaust and new brakes. Sounds great, right? But here's the catch. It's been sitting idle for 2 years and currently isn't running. That's a red flag we can't ignore, folks. Even rebuilt engines can develop issues when they sit for extended periods, especially if they weren't properly stored. The exterior tells its own story. The truck's wearing what the seller describes as beautiful patina. But we should note that a previous owner primered the entire truck, and while most has been removed, some primer remains. It's rocking a blue paint job underneath all that. One cool feature is that it's got a manual transmission, which is always fun for enthusiasts who like to row their own gears. It's also a rear-wheel drive setup with an 8-cylinder engine, a classic American truck configuration. At $8,000 OBO, or best offer, you're essentially buying a project that's had some significant mechanical work done but needs recommissioning. The fact that it's not currently running means you'll need to factor in some additional investment to get it back on the road. 6. Let's talk about this 1985 Chevy Silverado that's up for grabs at $7,000. And oh boy, this one's got a story to tell. First off, let's get excited about what's under the hood. We're talking about a 454 big block. That's the kind of engine that makes gearheads grin from ear to ear. It's paired with an automatic transmission, making this long bed Silverado a proper cruiser. The seller is refreshingly honest about this truck's condition. It's a 40-year-old vehicle that's being used as a daily driver, and yes, it comes with some 40-year-old truck issues. There's an exhaust leak they haven't fixed yet, and the AC is taking a permanent vacation. No cool air here, folks. The odometer is rolled over, so we're looking at some serious miles on this workhorse. But it's not all wear and tear. This brown beauty still has some nice features working for it. Power windows, locks, cruise control, and tilt steering. The seller mentions it runs great and turns heads wherever it goes, getting compliments regularly. At $7,000, you're getting a classic Silverado with that awesome 454 that's still capable of daily driving duties. Just remember, you're buying a truck that's been around since Reagan was president. It's going to need some TLC here and there. But for someone who appreciates these square-body Chevys and doesn't mind a few projects, this could be a really cool truck to own. 7. We're looking at a pretty interesting find. A 1971 Ford Ranchero listed at $9,500. And let me tell you, this one's got some stories to tell. Let's be straight up honest here. While the seller lists it in excellent condition, this Ranchero needs some mechanical love. The engine's got issues. There's lifter noise that might be pointing to a bad cam, so you'll need to factor in some serious engine work if you're considering this beauty. But here's where it gets interesting. This Ranchero has some really compelling features that make it worth a look. We're talking about an incredibly straight body with zero rust, which is huge for a 50-year-old vehicle. And get this, it's still running its original mufflers and tailpipes. The odometer shows 83,271 miles, which the seller claims are original. The Green Beauty comes equipped with AC, power steering, and power disc brakes. The interior is surprisingly well preserved with no rips, though the dash pad has some cracks. Pretty common for these old Fords. It's got the classic V8 and automatic transmission combo that these cars are known for. At $9,500, you're looking at what could be a fantastic foundation for a restoration project. The seller's right about one thing. Finding another Ranchero this clean and straight to start with would be tough. Just remember, you'll need to budget for that engine work. But for someone looking to restore one of these unique car-truck hybrids, this could be a solid starting point. 8. Let's talk about this 1983 Chevy CK4X4 that's up for grabs at $5,000, and woo, we need to be really honest about this one. So here's the straight scoop. This truck's got some serious issues. The biggest one, the 350 small block engine is blown, and we're talking catastrophically blown right through the oil pan. The current owner only managed to put about 100 miles on it before the engine decided to turn itself into a really expensive paperweight. Now it's not all bad news. This square-body Chevy's got some interesting features. It's sitting on a big lift, perfect for those who love that towering 4x4 look. And someone's added some modern touches like LED lights and power windows, though the seller admits they don't know how to operate them, so there's that little mystery to solve. The odometer shows 96,000 miles, and it comes with a clean title and some extra parts, which could come in handy. The seller describes the condition as fair and mentions that everything else seems to be in order. Except for that whole blown engine situation, of course. At $5,000, you're basically buying a project truck that needs a heart transplant. For someone who's got access to a 350 engine and knows their way around these classic Chevys, this could be an interesting project. The 4x4 setup and big lift might make it worth saving for the right person. 9. Let's talk about this 1984 Ford F-150 that's listed for $10,000, and I'm going to give you the straight scoop on this one. First up, we're looking at a classic single-cab 4x4 with manual locking hubs, powered by Ford's legendary 300 cubic inch straight-six engine. And here's some good news. The engine has been fully rebuilt. But hold on to your wrenches, because there are some issues we need to discuss. The seller's being upfront about the truck's condition, listing it as fair, and they're not hiding the problems. There's a leaking rear main seal that needs replacement. If you've ever done one, you know that's not a quick parking lot fix. And the cooling fan needs to be installed. These aren't deal breakers, but they're definitely jobs that need attention. The odometer shows 87,755 miles, and the truck comes with a bed liner to protect that cargo area. The body condition is described as fair, which is pretty typical for a nearly 40-year-old workhorse. It's wearing red paint, has a clean title, and comes with a manual transmission, perfect for those who like to row their own gears. At $10,000, you're buying a classic F-150 with that bulletproof straight six, once you sort out those issues, and proper 4x4 capability. These old Fords are getting harder to find, especially with the desirable inline-six engine. Just remember, you'll need to budget for that rear main seal job and cooling fan installation right off the bat. 10. Let's talk about this interesting 1979 Ford F-250 Lariat 4x4 that's up for grabs for $10,000, and I'm going to shoot straight with you about what we're looking at here. First off, this is indeed a pretty rare bird. A 79 Lariat 4x4 long bed with the beefy 400 V8 engine and those desirable Dana 60 differentials. That's a seriously heavy-duty setup that Ford built these trucks with, and it's the kind of stuff that makes collectors and enthusiasts take notice. Now, let's be real about the condition. The seller's listing it as fair, and there are some things you need to know. The truck's been sitting for 2 years, and while the motor ran when parked, always an interesting phrase in the car world, we all know what 2 years of sitting can do to a vehicle. The odometer's rolled over past 100,000 miles, so we're looking at some serious mileage here. The body has what the seller describes as surface rust, but no serious rust, which is actually pretty good for a 44-year-old work truck. It's wearing brown paint, and while it needs some TLC, the seller says it has good bones, which is important for these old Fords. At $10,000 firm, you're buying a project truck with some really desirable features. That 400 VR8, the Dana 60 diffs, and the rare Lariat trim level. But let's be clear, you're going to need to invest some time and money getting this old workhorse back on the road after its 2-year nap. 11. Let me tell you about this sweet 1966 Ford F100 that's up for grabs at $17,500, and there's a lot to unpack here. This is one of those builds where someone's clearly put in the work to make it a reliable driver while keeping that classic character. Let's start with the powertrain. We're looking at the original 352 engine with a 4-speed manual transmission, and both have received some serious attention. The heads have been rebuilt, carb's been gone through, and they've installed new exhaust manifolds. The transmission got a complete rebuild along with a new clutch, pressure plate, and flywheel. That's some proper mechanical love right there. What makes this truck extra cool is its stance. It's been lowered with DJM I-beams dropping the front 3 inches and the rear sitting 4 inches lower. It's rolling on some sweet 17-inch US wheels, rat rod style wheels, giving it that perfect blend of classic and custom. The braking system's been upgraded with a Willwood disc conversion up front, new rear brakes, and a functioning emergency brake. All important safety upgrades for a classic truck. The running gear got attention too, with new tie rod ends and that beefy Dana 60 flange axle rear diff. At $17,500, you're getting a well-sorted classic truck that's been thoughtfully modified and mechanically refreshed. The odometer shows 118,000 miles, but with all the rebuilding that's been done, this old Ford is ready for many more miles of cruising. 12. Let me tell you about this super cool 1972 Ford Bronco that's up for grabs at $30,000. And there's a lot to get excited about here. First off, this is an uncut Bronco, and that's a big deal in the Bronco world. These early Broncos are getting harder to find in their original form, as many have been chopped up or modified over the years. This one's powered by a 302 V8 paired with a 3-speed manual transmission on the tree. That's classic Ford right there. Being a Central Oregon truck is another huge plus. We're talking about a drier climate that's helped keep the dreaded rust monster at bay. The seller's honest about there being some surface rust underneath, but importantly, there's no serious rot. They're even including new floor pans for the driver's side, which shows they're being upfront about what the truck needs. The Bronco's wearing gray paint, though the clear coat is peeling. Hey, it happens with age. On the mechanical side, they've done some important updates with 2 new fuel tanks and sending units, plus a new radiator. That's some good practical upgrading right there. At $30,000, while it might seem steep to some, you're getting an increasingly rare unmodified early Bronco with the desirable 302 manual combo. These first-gen Broncos have been skyrocketing in value, especially uncut examples like this one. 13. Let me tell you about this incredible 1937 Chevy pickup that's available for $20,000, and there's quite a story here. This is one of those rare pre-war trucks that's received some serious attention. We're talking about a proper body-off restoration back in 2018 by R.W. Little in San Diego. They took it down to bare metal and started fresh, which is exactly what you want to see in a truck of this vintage. Under the hood, you've got the original 236 cubic inch straight-six engine paired with a 4-speed manual transmission that includes a granny gear. That's proper old-school truck engineering right there. The sellers made some smart upgrades, converting it to 12-volt electrical and updating to an open drive system. They've also installed 6 lug wheels and hubs from a 3/4-ton truck for added durability. The restoration included new front-end components, kingpins, bushings, tie rod ends, springs and shackles, fresh rear springs and shackles, new brake shoes, and complete rewiring. The interior is particularly interesting, featuring the original style crinkle brown finish that's been properly powder coated. Now let's be honest about what needs attention. The oak bed that was installed in 2018 has deteriorated badly. The bumpers are showing significant rust, and the radiator grille is starting to rust as well. But the body itself is solid with no dents or rust, which is huge for an 86-year-old truck. At $20,000, you're getting a mechanically sorted, historically significant pickup that runs reliably but needs some cosmetic TLC. All the gauges and lights work, and it's got that gorgeous green paint that really suits these old Chevys. 14. Let me tell you about this absolutely stunning 1981 Chevy C10 that's listed for $25,000. And wow, there's a lot to get excited about here. This is one of those builds where someone's really gone the extra mile. We're talking about a comprehensive restoration that's touched pretty much every major component. The seller's gone through the entire front end, new tie rod ends, ball joints, control arm bushings, and they even installed a new A-frame. That means this truck should track straight and true like it just rolled off the showroom floor. Under the hood, they've refreshed all the vital components: new radiator, water pump, carburetor, and even a new battery. The AC system has been updated, and it blows cold. Plus, you've got a new brake booster for safe stopping power. And get this, the odometer shows just 51,000 original miles. The truck's wearing yellow paint and comes with a fresh interior. One of the biggest selling points? There's no rust to worry about, which is pretty rare for these C10s. They've even put new tires on it, so you won't have any immediate expenses there. At $25,000, while it might seem steep to some, you're getting what appears to be a meticulously restored square body with all the major mechanical work already done. These trucks have been climbing in value, especially ones that have been restored to this level. 15. Let's talk about this sweet 1979 Ford Bronco Ranger XLT that's up for grabs at $28,500, and there's something special about this one. What we've got here is a pretty desirable spec. It's the upscale Ranger XLT trim level, packing the muscular 400 cubic inch V8 engine. And here's what makes it even more interesting. It's got a 4-speed manual transmission. That combination is getting harder to find these days, especially in a Ranger XLT trim. The seller's keeping the description pretty brief, but they're highlighting some important points. The Bronco's wearing a fresh paint job in black, which always looks killer on these second-gen bodies, and they've installed a new carpet kit to freshen up the interior. The odometer shows 69,000 miles, and it's coming with a clean title. At $28,500, while it's definitely in the higher range, these second-gen Broncos have been steadily climbing in value, especially well-maintained examples with the big 400 V8. The manual transmission makes it even more appealing for enthusiasts who prefer to row their own gears. While the seller lists it in excellent condition and describes it as a serious inquiries-only kind of vehicle, you'll still want to give it a thorough inspection. These old Broncos can hide rust in some tricky places, and you'll want to verify all the 4x4 components are working properly. 16. Let me tell you about this absolutely killer 1960 El Camino that's up for grabs for $30,000. And oh boy, this one's special. First off, we're looking at an Arizona car that's received a light restoration, which is already a big plus. Those desert cars typically avoid the rust issues that plague vehicles from wetter climates. But here's where it gets really interesting. Under the hood sits a fully built 454 big block, paired with a 4-speed manual transmission. That's a serious power upgrade from the original engine, and with less than 1,000 miles since the build, it's barely broken in. The body is wearing white paint and is described as super straight, with excellent panel fit and gaps, something that's crucial on these early El Caminos. The interior features a black bench seat that's in mint condition, along with perfect door panels. Modern touches include 18 and 20-inch chrome boss wheels with new tires, and they've added an aluminum radiator that keeps things cool even in 100+ degree Arizona heat. Some nice features include working vintage air conditioning, though it needs some adjustment, power steering, power brakes, all drums, and a working radio. The bed is described as perfect with no rust, and it comes with a soft tonneau cover. At $30,000, you're getting a beautifully restored first-generation El Camino with serious performance upgrades. The odometer shows 28,000 miles, though with the restoration and engine build, that number is less relevant than the condition and upgrades. 17. Let me tell you about this 1972 Chevy C20 pickup that's listed for $13,000, though I've got to mention that the listing information is pretty sparse. What we know is that this is a C20 model, That's Chevy's 3/4-ton truck from the beloved square body era. The truck's showing 89,821 miles on the odometer and is wearing blue paint. It comes with a clean title, which is always good news for a classic vehicle. Now, there's something a bit odd in the listing that we should address. It lists the drive as FWD, which is definitely incorrect for a 72 C20. These trucks were rear-wheel drive or 4x4, so that's likely just a listing error. The transmission is listed as Other, so we're missing some key details about the drivetrain setup. One interesting detail is that we do have the VIN, CCE 8242Z128387, which can be helpful for verification purposes if you're seriously interested in the truck. At $13,000, you're in the ballpark for a decent C20 from this era. But without more details about the condition, engine, or any restoration work that might have been done, it's hard to make a full assessment of the value. These early 70s Chevys are becoming increasingly collectible, especially if they're in good condition. 18. Let me tell you about this 1970 Chevy C20 that's listed for $15,000. Though I've got to be honest, this listing is extremely light on details. What we can see is that this is a 1970 C20. That's Chevy's 3/4-ton workhorse, showing 40,477 miles on the odometer and wearing yellow paint. It comes with a clean title, which is good news for any classic vehicle buyer. Now, I've got to point out some confusing information in the listing. It shows the drive as FWD, which is definitely incorrect. These C20s were either rear-wheel drive or 4x4, never front-wheel drive. The transmission is listed as Other, and the type is Other. So we're missing a lot of crucial information about what's actually under the hood and how it's configured. At $15,000, you're in the price range where you'd expect a pretty solid classic truck, but without any details about the engine, transmission, condition, or any restoration work that might have been done, it's impossible to make a proper assessment of the value. These early 70s, Chevys are becoming more collectible every year, but you really need more information to make an informed decision. If you're interested in this truck, you'll definitely want to ask the seller for a lot more details. What engine it's running, what transmission it has, the condition of the body and undercarriage, and any work that's been done to it. These C20s are fantastic trucks with a strong following, but at this price point, you need to know exactly what you're getting. 19. Let me tell you about this absolutely stunning 1970 Chevy C10 that's up for grabs at $30,000. And wow, this one's special. We're looking at what appears to be a really well-preserved example with just 78,000 original miles, and the seller's got the documentation to back it up, including the original build sheet, owner's manual, and 20 years of maintenance records. That kind of paperwork is gold for classic vehicle collectors. Under the hood, you've got the classic 350 V8 paired with an automatic transmission, and they've made some smart upgrades like a new Edelbrock carburetor. It's got power steering and power front disc brakes, which make it much more enjoyable to drive than its manual, everything counterparts. The body is described as very straight with no rust. That's huge for these old trucks. And the paint is nice. Inside, they've replaced the dash pad and door panels, keeping the interior clean and fresh. Interestingly, it's a radio delete model, which some collectors actually prefer. Some great details here. It's still running the factory single exhaust, has excellent tires with the original hubcaps. Try finding those in good condition. And comes with its spare tire and jack. The front end has been rebuilt, and all lights and gauges are working properly. At $30,000, or best offer, you're looking at what appears to be a very well-maintained, documented C10 that's ready to show or drive. The price might seem steep to some, but with the documentation, condition, and originality, it's in line with where these classic C10s are heading value-wise. 20. Let me tell you about this 1985 Ford F250 dually that's listed for $4,000, and I've got to be straight with you about what we're looking at here. This is an old-school workhorse powered by the 6.9L IDI diesel. That's the non-turbo international engine that Ford used before the Power Stroke era. It's paired with a 3-speed automatic transmission, and while it might not win any drag races, as the seller honestly admits, these trucks were built to pull, and this one's proved it by hauling 15 vehicles without issues. Now let's talk about the real story here. The odometer shows 52,891 miles, but the seller's upfront about it likely having rolled over once or twice. So we're looking at somewhere between 152,891 and 252,891 actual miles. The truck's originally from Ohio, and yeah, that means rust. The seller's honest about there being some rusty areas, which is pretty typical for trucks from the Salt Belt. The suspension needs work due to regular use wear, though the seller does have parts to include with the sale if it happens soon. That's something you'll want to factor into your budget and plans. At $4,000, you're getting a legitimate work truck with that bulletproof 6.9 IDI diesel. These engines are known for their reliability, even if they're not powerhouses like modern diesels. The single cab, long bed, dually configuration makes it perfect for serious towing work.